players gather to cast powerful spells, some of the oldest and the most powerful in the history of Magic the Gathering. Veteran Explorer, Arclight Phoenix, Rishadan Brigand, and many others. Battling head-to-head in brutal combat, they all have one thing in common: to uphold their legacy and the search for eternal glory.
The Eternal Glory podcast is brought to you by the minds behind BoshNRoll on YouTube, Thraben University, and theepicstorm.com.
Episode 36 of the Eternal Glory podcast, The Mailbag Strikes Back. I'm Phil Gallagher, joined by Bryant Cook and Brian Coval. How are you all doing tonight?
Hanging in there.
Doing okay, Phil. Doing okay. How are you?
Not bad. Been a busy week, but I'm ready to just kind of hang out and chat Magic for approximately 2 hours.
That sounds great.
All right, Brian, what have you been up to?
Well, my school finally got hit with a COVID outbreak. We had 7 confirmed cases in our building, last I heard. We had 2 confirmed cases, and they shut down 2 classrooms over it, like the classrooms where the cases were found. And then they let us all come in. That was on a Sunday night. They heard about that. They let us all come in on Monday. And then on Monday night, they were like, oh, wait, actually, nobody come in for the rest of the week. We're getting more information. And now we're shut down through December 1st. So it has officially breached our walls in a pandemic kind of way. So I'm pretty sure I dodged it. But I am sick with something else. I think it's food poisoning. So
Yikes.
I'm doing this podcast on basically no sleep, and my body is in a lot of pain. But the show must go on. But the good news is I didn't have to call off work because I'm already working from home.
That's the spirit.
What a trooper.
Yeah, I dragged myself into my 7:30 a.m. team meeting this morning, and I just didn't even turn on my camera. I was like curled up in the fetal position on my couch with my headphones in and just letting the meeting happen to me. So it's pretty cool that nobody had to know that all that was going on. With all this free time, I've gotten a ton of housework done, just like stuff that's been sitting around for a while. The back deck, I've mentioned that we worked on over the summer. We're stringing curtains around it now. We got these sweet curtain wires from IKEA that you just sort of like screw in on both ends, then ratchet them together till they're tight. And that was super satisfying to install. We're gonna hang just like drop cloths from them as just like a rustic, cheap type of curtain out there. We put up one prototype already. It looks pretty good, and then we'll get the rest of them up pretty soon. I got some art back, some stuff I got framed. I have 2 albums by the Toasters, the New York City ska band, and I saw them in 2019 and in 2020, and at each one I bought a like vinyl record and had Buck sign it, and so I got my 2 Toasters albums framed, and then a couple years ago as a birthday present I got this Pittsburgh and the Allegheny, an unusual happenstance. It's by a company called Alternate Histories, and it basically has Godzilla like traipsing through downtown Pittsburgh in like an old-timey like etched drawing with like a little plaque that says like, oh, the folly of man, the West Virginia coal miners were pressured to dig deeper and deeper and they awoken something. And so like it's just this like fun thing, but now it has a pretty bomb frame around it.
So because you mentioned a ska band, this didn't make the question list for this episode, but I'm going to ask it. Someone on Twitter asked, Brian, how do you feel about the Aquabats?
Well, you can tell your mom and tell your dad that they're super rad. No, I did put that one in there. The Aquabats are great. Also, since we're talking about them, Yo Gabba Gabba is among the best children's TV shows there's ever been. In my line of work, I'm exposed to a lot of kids' TV, and I could genuinely sit and watch Yo Gabba Gabba with my students and not be upset at all.
So at the beginning of COVID, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to say Yo Gabba Gabba was invented by the singer from the Aquabats. That's the connection, if folks didn't know that.
So at the beginning of COVID, we started making pizza every Friday night because of the Aquabats, the song Pizza Day. And we just like casually like destroy the song as we make our pizza, which is kind of cool.
So I'm not going to lie. The third verse of Pizza Day kind of hits me. Like it's like the song is like goofy and fun. And then like the moral of the story is like, I miss that stability of school lunch. Like I wish I had something reliable like that in my life as an adult. And I feel that like that. I'm not going to say I've teared up during the third verse of Pizza Day, but like I haven't not done that either. If it just hits right, if I'm just in the mood that day.
So I only recently found this out. Like I grew up a huge Blink-182 fan. Like Enema of the State was probably the first CD that I ever played it so much as a CD that I had to like burn it onto a burn disc so I could keep on listening to it because it was too scratched up. I didn't know that Travis Barker was originally in the Aquabats. Like that blew my mind.
Yep. Yeah. That definitely surprised me when I learned it too, because I had been a Blink fan and an Aquabats fan like since I was a child. And at some point, I think I was in college, I learned that Travis Barker started in the Aquabats, and I was just like, what? But yeah, it's great. Aquabats are great. Ska is great. So, what else have I been doing? Oh, Hearthstone just did a huge revamp of all their stuff. Like, I've been pretty medium minus on Hearthstone for the past year or so. Like, I haven't wanted to play the actual game in a long time, but they released like an auto chess battler called Battlegrounds like a year and a half ago. And I did like Battlegrounds for a while, but I was slowing down on that. And they just released a new game mode called Duels. They revamped their entire reward system. They released a new set today. Like, so I have a lot. Hearthstone has a lot of my attention right now for the first time in a while. I'm kind of enjoying that.
Just wait until Arena's on mobile.
I will never play Hearthstone again. If I can draft Magic the Gathering in a functional way on my phone, like Hearthstone is dead.
Yeah, I guess I'll take this opportunity to step in and say what I've been up to. So last week I did a collab with Brian and we played some Historic on Arena, and that was fun and cool. And I thought Historic was a format that I might want to dabble in a little bit because it's it's an eternal format that I can't play on Magic Online. And, you know, if I'm locked out of that, it might be time to, like, dabble in Arena. So I downloaded Arena, decided I'd play some drafts, and then I drafted 6 times over the weekend, and I think I'm up to, like, 9 drafts now. The ability to fire off drafts on Arena, just, like, one after the other, and just pick up and play whenever you want, is legitimately really cool.
Yeah, one of the closing thoughts in our video was I said, are you going to go download Arena now? And you were like, whoa, let's not get hasty. But here we are. The client is great.
I had no intention on it. And then I sat there and thought about it for a couple of days. And I was thinking like, man, I need to take breaks when I'm working from home. Like a best of 1 match is a really good break. Maybe I should do this. And then I realized that you can probably do a draft in half the time on Arena that you can on Magic Online because people can't sit there for 5 minutes in the tank. And that was very appealing. Now I have to figure out how to learn limited formats, which I've never really done.
What I'm learning over these last few episodes is that Phil has a very addictive personality. First couldn't give up Vintage, now addicted to Arena. I'm loving it. Phil's growing.
I think the real observation here is that Magic the Gathering rules, and there's no reason to be a format specialist because they're all pretty great. And just consume it however you can.
Yeah, I'm the sort of player where when I have the fire for something, like, good God, will I go? And when I don't have the fire, I'll do the bare minimum that's acceptable. And I haven't had the fire for Legacy much in the past year, but right now I'm like, hot damn Vintage, hot damn Limited. I've got things to learn in those formats, and I'm excited, and I'm making mistakes and losing because of it, and it's cool.
Yeah, we had this conversation probably 6 months ago now where I think it was off camera where Phil was basically like, I'm pretty burnt out on Legacy, but I'm a Legacy streamer. What do I do? And Bryant and I were both like, play other formats. That it's refreshing. Like, if I'm not excited about Legacy, I'll record a couple modern videos, and then like Legacy is exciting again. Maybe the meta shifts over those 2 weeks or whatever, and then like, all right, I'm back in. And at least the novelty is different. Like the deprivation satiation cycle of just doing the same thing over and over again. Like all of that plays a role.
Yeah, I'll definitely piggyback on what Brian said. Playing other formats is amazing. However, I will admit, I just can't get into Modern anymore. Like, I watch other people play it and, like, Hangouts, and the format just seems to be Force and Negation decks versus, like, Belcher, Oops decks versus Burn. Like, those are the three main decks in Modern, and it just doesn't seem very appealing to me. I've been having a lot of fun playing Standard and Pioneer recently, but Modern just seems gross.
I have this, like, beautiful format in my mind of Birthing Pod and Splinter Twin that I will never get back, and I hold this on this pedestal of one of like the most fun Magic formats that I've ever played. And every time I think about Modern, I think about that and I go, I don't know if it'll ever be as good as her again.
Yeah, so one of the questions in our mailbag coming down is what's our favorite deck we've ever played? And you and I both picked Modern decks. So, I mean, we'll get to that in a little bit, but there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah. Death and Taxes is apparently one of the best decks in Modern right now, though. So, like, maybe.
Oh, baby.
I heard it's okay in Legacy, Phil.
It's pretty good there. I'm just not excited about it, which is weird. I should be. The deck's really good right now. But, I don't know. Hogak, though.
You just summed up my entire experience with Death and Taxes in Legacy. Like, that deck's pretty good. I'm just not excited about it.
Yeah. I think that's really all that I've been up to. It's just been really nice. Like, a lot of the stress associated with the election is gone, and I've just been, like, hanging out, playing Lego games with my girlfriend, and playing a shit ton of Magic. Like, life's pretty good right now, all things considered.
So,
Bryant, what have you been doing?
After the last episode, Brian recommended that I watch Queen's Gambit in the last episode. I think I watched the first one that night, and I was instantly hooked. And the next night, my fiance and I watched the remaining 7 episodes. So, like work ended, and then we sat on the couch and just watched the other 7. Like, I couldn't stop watching. I just wanted to watch more. The parallels to Magic.
It took us 3 days, but yeah, we did that as well.
The parallels to Magic in it were insane. There was a funny interaction we had while watching. The main character gets paired against someone with a really low elo. They're like, oh, well, what's your score? And her opponent said like, oh, like 1526 or something. I'm like, oh, that's not very good. And my fiance's reaction was like, how would you know? Like, I don't know what elo is. Been playing Magic for some time. I remember elo quite well. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I don't miss elo at all. Wow. That was not a good system for Magic the Gathering, but we did live in it for a long time.
I was actually looking at a screenshot on my hard drive the other day where it was 2011 that they got rid of elo. And I took a screenshot at the very end because it was the only time that I ever hit this. I was above 1800 in all 3 major formats, constructed, limited, and I don't remember what the other one was, but I was above 1800 in all of them. And I was like very proud of that. It was Eternal, Standard, and Limited. That's what it was.
Yeah, they broke Eternal into its own thing at some point. That was pretty close to the end. That didn't count for a long time. Circa GP Boston, I think 2009. My elo in Limited was 2032, and you get 3 buys at 2050. So I went to the local shop. I was like, I'll just spike a draft real quick and get 3 buys for GP Boston. I lost in the first round of the draft. I tilt refired, lost in the first round of the second draft, and I was barely over 2 buys. I was like knocked all the way down to like 1970 or something from losing those 2 rounds. And I was like, fuck this system. I hate this.
Yeah, it rewarded you for not playing Magic, which is just like not how things should be.
Yeah, tons of these stories exist, but I definitely remember being at a PTQ once, and one of the like mid-level pros of the era, like Ben Peebles-Mundy or AJ Soccer or someone, like won the first 2 rounds of a PTQ, then dropped. They're like, I got what I needed. They just needed a little elo bump.
Yeah, I mean, they were very high, like, I forget the exact words, but like the bigger the event, the more elo you got.
Yeah, the K value.
Yeah, K value. There we go. It's been so long. But other than elo, my computer died last week. I was talking to one of my IT people at work, and they're like, you should really install an SSD into your Mac. It's not that difficult. I'll send you a video. And I installed the SSD correctly, but when I went to go reattach the computer, one of the wires connecting the screen to the logic board disconnected. And I went to go reconnect it, and shit just started sparking, like all over. And I attempted to turn it back on, but you could hear the fan getting super loud. So I shut it down. I decided I was going to let it sit for 20 minutes. And when I went back, it wouldn't even power on anymore. So I had the iMac for 9 years. It had a very good run, but I ended up getting a new one that I'm using to record tonight. So pretty happy with my purchase. And I mean, 9 years out of any computer is pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's solid.
And other than that, I have some sad news. Grilling season's over, Brian. I put the grill away. Yeah, we're doing oven-based pizzas now.
The idea of grilling season is just baffles my mind. Because my dad growing up, he would be just bundled up out there grilling in the snow in January. Like there was no grilling season. That man grilled year round, 365 days a year. And my grill, like I have a cover for it, and it's kind of under like a little ledge on the edge of my deck. Like it's outdoors. It's not like inside, which would be an insane place to have a grill. But like there is a little roof over it. It's pretty well covered. So I don't think I'm going to be bringing mine in, but we'll see how much I actually use it.
So one thing that we've realized because at the start of COVID, we were grilling the pizzas and the crust was always extra crunchy. We've moved to doing it in the oven. And I don't know if it's because we have a convection oven or not, but the crust is like kind of soft. So now we're considering like pre-cooking the crust a little bit and then putting everything on just so that it's a little more firm when we go to eat it. So now we have to like relearn how to cook pizza, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's a pretty common strat. Were you not pre-cooking your crust when you were grilling it too?
No, because when you grill it, it becomes extra crunchy. So like you just didn't need to.
The way I've grilled pizzas in the past is like you take the dough out there and you like grill both sides for a little while, like face down, flip it face up, and then bring it in, put the toppings on it. That's the method I've used in the past. But
and that's my life update.
Yeah, cooking is cool. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, great time to learn.
All right. We do have one donation from Henrik Korkutz. Thank you, Henrik. We appreciate your support.
We got a handful of feedback. A lot of that is really going to be incorporated into the podcast episode itself, but we do have 2 things we'll highlight from the beginning. The first one is from Phil on Reddit, who says, "Woo, vintage! I've been getting into the format. Very fun. Buying a piece of power this year. Not sure I'll get the full 5 pieces for Doomsday, though. Maybe one day. It's a different kind of magic, though. Bizarre world." Bizarre world.
Are you just reading your own comments now, Phil?
No.
Is this you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I will ever own a paper vintage deck at this point. I downsized my collection considerably about 2 years ago when I needed to buy a car. But like getting into the format online has been awesome, and I've been enjoying it so much. The gameplay's interesting. There's so much to learn, so many micro decisions that matter. And I'm really happy to see more people getting into it. I hope the success of Eternal Weekend gets Wizards to make more of these God account events for Vintage and Legacy so that we get new people interested.
Yeah, I think that between Gen Con PAX and Eternal Weekend, it's been shown that these events are desirable. And running something like Eternal Weekend through the MTGO client. You don't need MTG Melee to work through it or anything. Like, it's just such a nice experience. And I hope they do. I hope Eternal Weekend remains in paper. Like, I hope they don't kill the real life version. But I hope they add things like that to the schedule in the future.
One thing that I've been finding interesting since Eternal Weekend about Vintage is the format was like pretty slow moving, but over the last month or so, it's been very, very fast. And every week it seems like there's a new top deck and everyone's like trying to beat the new top deck, which is a sign of a very healthy metagame. So Vintage is in a great spot right now.
Okay, side note, I'm going to play some Vintage on stream tomorrow night. What would you recommend playing? Because, like, the metagame has moved so quickly in the last week where it's like, Jeskai is good, Dredge is here, screw Jeskai, Shops is here, like, screw Dredge, and I have no idea where, like, what I should be submitting right now.
Have you tried the bug deck? I mean, I don't like it, but it would be up your alley.
No, I haven't done that yet. It's on my list to try. I was going to try PO, but I'm kind of skeptical about that.
It's not very good right now.
Moment. I think I'm going to wait a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
If Shops is on top, PO is a good choice. But if people are still hogacking, then you're in trouble. And Jeskaiing. Oh, God, Jeskai. Yeah. It's a rough time to learn PO.
All right. So now we're on... Oh, wait, no. We have one more piece of feedback. At BoshNRoll, as a monk in D&D seems just right. From Vintage Pro Justin Ganari.
Yep, I think I've said this in a number of places here. I might have said it last episode too. I did not even think about like my monk token or monastery mentor when I made my character a monk in D&D. I just read all the character types and what they're about, the classes, and I was like, oh, this appeals to me. And then later, all the Magic players pointed out like, oh, you're a monk, obviously. Like, well, apparently I am drawn to that type of lifestyle.
All right, let's go into some quick MTG updates. We kind of have sprinkled some of those in here already. So Brian and I did that historic D&T collab last week. That was a lot of fun, and the deck actually ended up putting up way more wins than I was expecting.
Yeah, we went from bronze 4. We started with at the bottom of the ladder, and we ended the video in silver. So we were winning.
Yeah, we beat all the poor children at the bottom of the ladder.
Aww.
But the deck had more game than I was expecting. Like, cards were good. That was a lot of fun. I also did a Vintage Cube collab with the folks at Dad Nauseum. That was a fun evening. Other than that, I got 34th in the Vintage Showcase Challenge, which is not actually all that impressive because the event was small. But I am having a lot of fun vintaging. Got super punished for being greedy as well. And, like, could have just killed my opponent by drawing any land to bring back some Bloodghasts. And instead, I was like, I'll activate this Bazaar. They only have one card. It's probably not Ravtrap. It was Ravtrap. But c'est la vie. Alright, what about on your guys' end? So, Brian, I know you're doing Pro Tour testing right now.
I am. I've been playing a lot of Arena. Standard's going pretty well. At one point, I was 13th ranked on Arena for Standard. I haven't started Historic yet. It's something that I need to do. Sort of waiting on Wizards to hand out the God accounts, the unlocked accounts for Arena. Some more notable streamers have been streaming with theirs, but I haven't received mine yet, which I think is sort of unfair. It's definitely an edge if you're in Rivals or MPL, where you already have your account. But if you're not, you have to wait until roughly a week before the PT starts, which seems kind of shady, especially when you have to turn in your deck list like several days before the actual event.
Oof.
Yeah.
How much would it set you back to just get the deck you're thinking about?
I'd probably put like 100 in and could probably build the deck for 100. I might just do that.
If you do well at the event, that will more than pay for itself.
Yeah, I bought all of the standard deck that I'm playing for $50, and it's like performing very well. So it's pretty cheap. You're mostly just buying packs and then using the wild cards, but a lot of the deck was commons and uncommons. So I mentioned last week I'm still transferring over reports. I'm down to the final 5. I just can't wait to be done with this. It's so tedious and I'm sick of doing it. Like I've gotten to the point where I've done so many that I'm just like dreading each and every one that I do. So hopefully by the time we record the next episode, I'll be done and then everyone can quit hearing me talk about it. I won a Pioneer Challenge with Lotus Combo. I haven't been doing very well in Vintage. I just don't think that Paradoxical Outcome is very good right now, but I'm working on a couple of ideas to maybe turn that around. I know that I want 2 basics, and Pyroblast is just very strong in the metagame right now, so I want to be playing red, but I might end up testing out Jeskai Peel with no black. Like right now, my list is 4 color for, the broken black cards, but I think mana stability is so important right now. But anyway, I ended up playing the Pioneer Challenge because I scrubbed out of another Vintage challenge. And I was like, I guess I could play Pioneer with that new broken Lotus combo list that I was working on for the Pioneer Showcase. And I just crushed everything that didn't have a basic mountain in it. Like if you weren't running a turn 1 drop mountain creature, I was just crushing you. So once the Lotus deck figures out how to beat red decks, I think that deck is just going to be unstoppable. And I was working on that list with Winged Hussar, known for playing Vintage and Legacy, a bizarre specialist. We work well together. Ryan had a lot of good ideas, so props to Ryan, giving Ryan a proper shout out. And for the Epic Storm was kind of cool. Reed Duke was on the epicstorm.com, a guest for Infernal Tutoring. If you haven't checked that out, I would highly recommend going to do so. Reed is very, very intelligent, very good Magic player, and actually had a better line than I did in one of the scenarios, so you're not going to want to miss that.
Whew.
Yeah, that point is going to come up later. That's in
Yes,
my
it
notes
is.
for one of the questions that we were asked. So that it's fun that you had Reed. So I have not been doing a whole lot of Magic. Like I said, I've been playing Hearthstone and just catching up on TV and playing Breath of the Wild, just all that sort of stuff. I did the collab with Phil. That's on my channel. I posted a 5-0 last night with Rainbow Depths, Tom Hep's Rainbow Depths deck. If you haven't seen that, it's a trip. He basically cut all of the forests out of bug depths, so you're immune to submerge, and replaced them all with City of Brass, Mana Confluence, and Gemstone Mine. And it's just hilarious how good that deck is. I had never played Depths before I recorded the video. Like I literally bought the stages and the Depths. I didn't even own them on Moto. I bought them right before I queued into the league and started recording. And I lost game 2 in round 1 and then went 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0 over the next 4 rounds to 5-0 the league. And the whole time I was just thinking, like, is this what we've been letting Negator 77 get away with all these years? No wonder he's the trophy leader all the time. This is easy. Like, I've never played an easier league of Legacy in my life, and it was just like most of my videos are around 2 hours long. This one was like 1 hour, and I was like, why cast Brainstorm ever again? I could just do this.
Yeah, the Depths leagues where Depths just does its thing are so good. And then you get paired like against a string of Death and Taxes, and it's just like, why does everything that they do interact with my combo? Fuck.
Yeah, definitely. Like the one opponent who got a game off me, they were on Maverick, and in game 1 they had a turn 1 Zenith for 0, and I was like, please be elves, please be elves, please be elves. But then I Inquisitioned them, and I was like, damn it, it's Maverick. But still managed to cheese past them. But that's all I've been really up to. I've done a couple Kaladesh drafts. I'm not super motivated, which I know I'm going to regret later, because Arena does reward velocity or like consistency in showing up, clearing your quests, and like drafting the sets when they're live. That's much better than trying to fill in blanks with your wild cards later. But I'm just not super motivated to draft a lot right now. But I'll probably dig deep before Kaladesh rotates out, make sure I have those cards.
I do think that the format is really fun. Like, I think it's very interesting. Like, I'd be willing to chat about that off podcast because it's kind of like out there a little bit in terms of content, more so than normal. But there's a lot of cool archetypes, and yeah, well, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I drafted Kaladesh when it was the real set in real life. It's a pretty great draft format. I have a sealed box of Kaladesh in my collection. Like, I keep boxes of draft formats I think are great for the future someday. And Kaladesh is in the pile, so...
Well, it's not going to be worth
like the format.
anything. Everything that's good out of it is banned, right?
That's probably true.
Well, I guess it's time to transition into the actual topic of the night, which is the mailbag. So we asked for all sorts of just generic questions you have for the podcast that aren't really enough for an entire episode. Twitter, Discord, Facebook, all over the place. We got tons and tons of questions, more so than we could possibly answer on here. But we're going to dig in and try to get to a handful of them tonight. I was going to come up with something clever to do for this bit. I don't really remember how like the Blues Clues jingles go, but I know there's something about like getting the mail there. So we'll just
Here's
pretend
the mail,
we did
it
that.
never fails. Makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to, well, mail.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was looking for.
Yep, that's the song. As I mentioned not long ago, I spend a lot of time around kids' shows in my line of work.
All right. Question 1 is from Hassar MTG. How important is winning the die roll these days? In Modern and Pioneer, it's all that matters.
Well, winning the die roll is an advantage in Magic the Gathering. That data have borne that out over basically all formats, over all the history of Magic. I think that the new card design philosophy of jamming planeswalkers and steamroll, like snowballing advantage, really favors the person on the play more than it has in the past. And I think that in like the long term, like I don't know if this is going to happen soon, but I think that there's going to have to be some sort of acknowledgement in the rules to even this out a little bit in Magic's future. Like I think that it's all that matters is kind of heavy-handed. I don't believe that is true. And there are decks you can play that will do better off, like having Force of Will in your deck compared to Chalice of the Void. Like you don't mind being on the play or the draw so much when you're the Force of Will deck, but being the Chalice deck, you really want that die roll. So like there's things like that matter. But in a game like Hearthstone, the person on the draw starts with an extra card in their hand, and they get a Lotus Petal. So like there's just like, and the person on the play is still favored in Hearthstone. So like that there's a lot to try to figure out there, and Magic is still using the same system it was when it was born in 1993. So I think there might be some space to explore there.
So I'm with Brian in the fact that the 2019 to 2020 cards really emphasize being on the play and it rewards the snowballing effect that he described. But I'm going to change the question a tiny, tiny bit. And when we eventually get back to paper Magic, whenever that happens, hopefully 6 months from now, whenever, I really wish that Wizards would make things automated when it comes to play draw. You can easily make this happen within... they don't use DCI Reporter anymore, but whatever people are using to generate pairings, just because at some point, and I mean, it definitely already happens, but people cheat with the die roll. I've experienced it against me before where I use large dice and people don't even give them a full rotation. So they'll just pick them up and give like a half roll, acknowledging that like, hey, if I put these two here and do a half roll, I'll get like a 10 or 11 or whatever. So people like... it's a easy way to cheat that it's like hard to dispute because like, how are you going to prove that your opponent didn't try to give a full good roll or, you know, like how do you prove that to a judge? Like if they just, there's no evidence of anything. So I think that it would just be good for Magic if they like removed another way of sketchiness from the game. Like just make everything automated. It would be nice and clean. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like chess tournaments, it is my understanding that they automate who, like, they aggregate like who goes first more, or like, so it balances out. Like in an 8-round tournament, you should go first 4 times. Like, and the tournament software just tracks that for you, and like that's just part of how that game works. And we haven't had this conversation since March because there's no paper Magic, but people still rolling high roll need to get with the times. Like, even odd that shit. You can't cheat with an even odd. Like, if you want to get really like foolproof, have each person roll 1d6 and just call even or odd. There's no way to cheat that.
Yeah. The only thing that I don't like about that is assuming that you're both using the same set of dice, that means both people have to touch them. And I just don't want someone else's slimy hand touching my dice.
Yeah, that's fair. I have become enraged in the past when opponents just reach into my dice. Or like I have my dice and my tokens and stuff like on my side of the table or like next to my deck. And they'll just like resolve a planeswalker, then just reach into my shit and put a die on their card. And it's like, excuse you. Like, if you had asked, I would have happily provided. But also, it's just the full rub-in. Like, oh, great, Jace resolved. Oh, great, there's taking my die to use it. Like, so, yeah. I am looking forward to using like COVID and health concerns in the future to not let anyone use my stuff at the gaming table.
Yeah. Kind of back to the question on my end. I think that I agree with the whole 2019, 2020 recent card design point 100%. But I also think that not every matchup is like super swung by the die roll. So to use a vintage example, you can be Hogak Vine on the play and create 12 plus power on turn 1. And then your opponent goes Tabernacle pass, and you go, oh shit. And the fact that you were on the play didn't actually matter all that much. And I think there's a lot of legacy fair matchups, like take something like Death and Taxes versus Snow, where those games do drag on for such a long time that the die roll is not really the defining factor. So I think the combination of powerful things that you can do and average game length means that a lot of things aren't nearly as swung by the die roll in these older Eternal formats as they are in some of the newer formats. Now, that said, on the play, when you go Arcanist and you have Days backup, like, good luck.
Yeah, that's the Delver life. All right, next question from Chronic Delver. This is a two-parter. The first is, was there a time you consider the best era of Legacy? Same question for Vintage. And part 2, WotC is going to unban one card banned in the last year? I think this question was supposed to say last 10 years. What card do you argue to bring back? So
do we want to do part 1 then part 2, or just kind of have each person do both parts?
Let's do part 1 first, and then come back around. So, I personally, I think that Legacy is pretty cool now. Like, I know there's a lot of hate for the 2019-2020 Haymaker type cards, but I think that we are in a healthy metagame. It just might not look like the metagame of old that people wish that it was. And as far as actually answering in the spirit of the question, I really like the tail end of the Deathrite Shaman era, when Grixis Delver was just the obvious best deck, and Red Stompy was one of the better ways to fight it, and a real like hard metagame coalesced around those two decks, and it was really exploitable to someone who wants to play a lot of basic lands. So, and that was me. So I did quite well at the end of that one. I love a hard metagame. The Invitational I won, there were two decks in that tournament. There was Death Shadow and Eldrazi Tron. and I played a deck that beat both. And I was doing the same sort of thing with Blue-White Miracles at the end of the Grixis Delver and Moonstompy era of Legacy. So I love an exploitable metagame. So that's my answer. Also on this subject, I think Brian's going to say basically the same thing, where thinking about like taking a trip down memory lane of like, wow, yeah, that was a fun format versus this is how Legacy should be, are totally different thoughts, different things. And like, I don't want anyone to ever think anything I say about like, oh, I really liked playing Bug Landstill in 2010. I don't want anyone to ever think that means I think Legacy should be like that forever. Because I don't. Like, cards are going to get printed, formats are going to change, and that's Magic. And I think Legacy is pretty great right now, and I thought it was great in 2010 as well.
I don't know why I have to answer behind Brian. He's just stealing all of my answers. I'll be honest, I don't like these questions. I think people get a little too caught up in the past. And then what happens is like Brian said, you'll be like, well, I like this metagame a lot. So then people will argue about this on Reddit or Twitter, where we need to go back to pre-War of the Spark. That was the best Legacy format of all time. And I just don't think that's a productive way to think about Magic, because you're never going to get back to pre-War. You have to appreciate things when they're happening, or you're just missing out on life, right? So like Brian said, I think the current Legacy format's fine. Is it perfect? No. Is it awful? No. It's just average. And sometimes that's okay too. The best thing you can do is just learn to adapt, change your play habits, and play patterns. Just, go with the flow. Maybe learn a new archetype or learn a new skill. Cards like Predict won't always be playable. I know like that's a card people love and they don't like to play Patterns of Oko. Well, you had your time to play Predict for years. Now it's the time for something different. Same thing with Cabal Therapy. I love Cabal Therapy. That card's not playable anymore. So you have to learn to play with new things. I've learned to play with Veil of Summer. You just have to adapt. And I guess I'll answer the question. Like Brian, I also love the end of the Deathrite Shaman era. I think the Epic Storm was secretly one of the best decks in the format. Anthony Laverde and I crushed multiple events in a row. We were first and third in one of the Leaving a Legacy Opens. 4 Empty, 4 Cabal Therapy, 4 Probe was just disgusting.
All right. Echoing kind of what the others have said, I think Legacy is great. Like, of all of the time that I've played Legacy, I would say that 90+% of the time, I would characterize it as like the best format that I'm playing, or highly enjoyable. The last year or so has been a lower point for me, but even within that, there have been some amazing moments. Like, playing with Luris decks, like, that gameplay was insane. It was so skill testing. Like, sometimes you got, like, obliterated by your opponent's Luris, but in the games where, like, you both have Luris and, like, it's unchecked and you're, like, trying to figure out how to wiggle through and fight those small battles, like, gameplay was super cool, and we saw the emergence of some decks that had not seen play in Legacy for, like, 7 years, like, actual factual white weenie, and that was so cool.
It's because everything got smaller. We saw like almost a renaissance of things that people loved. We saw Stifle come back and Spell Snare, Nibble Mongoose. Like, it just felt like old Magic mixed with new Magic. Sorry, Phil. I also loved that format.
Yeah. I have a really hard time picking one era of Legacy that I just adore, because so many different eras of Legacy have something that's so important to me. So when I first started playing Legacy, Mangara locking people was my life. And that was so fun. Like, just grinding out my opponent's lands one at a time and watching them trying to wiggle out. And that same Deathrite Shaman era that you two mentioned was totally my jam. But if I had to pick one, I would say the height of Miracles. I loved D&T versus Miracles matches so much. They were so skill testing, and I was always trying to hunt Anurag down at paper tournaments and get paired against him, because like those matches were just my life.
I think I had a little bit of Stockholm Syndrome, if I'm being completely honest. Like, I didn't think that they were ever going to ban top and that this was my life being miserable. And then once it was gone, it was like a giant weight off my shoulders. shoulders. I just couldn't believe that I could be that happy playing Magic ever again. At the time I was like, it doesn't need to be banned, I guess. And then once it was gone, I was like, oh my, this is what life can feel like. Like, it was so rewarding.
Oh, I was definitely the underdog in those matches in many cases. Like, I won games because I knew what I was doing very well. I knew what my plan was and how to execute it. But, like, damn, Miracles was good.
Yeah, I think we all got there at some point. I played Elves through that entire era, and, like, I got to a point where I felt favored against everyone except Joe Lissette. And that... Like Joe just understood the matchup slightly better than I did, but I understood it better than everyone else. And like I got paired against Joe once, and he like force of willed my turn 2 Wirewood symbiote on this basically empty board, and I was like, God damn it, I needed that. And like I don't think anyone else in the room would have made that play. And just like, but I did think it was fun, just like overcoming the monster, but. I also agree after the fact that it's better that if there just isn't a monster. All right, so what card... All right, WotC comes to us and says we have to unban one legacy card from the last 10 years. What is it? I'm going to say Zerda. Like, I'm not even convinced Zerda needs to be banned now, just even without the hypothetical situation. Like, the companion rule might have set her back far enough. But... That's what I would say.
I'm going to have an unpopular opinion because I think it would be a good deck that would be possibly tier 1 that could fight blue decks reasonably well. I think Survival of the Fittest should be unbanned.
Oh. It actually is probably fine. There's so many more answers to it than there used to be.
When it was banned,
like
Cage didn't exist, Surgical Extraction, Rest in Peace. And people are like, well, you could put Gristlebrand into play on turn 2. Yeah, Black Red Reanimator exists. Like, there's so many ways to cheat ridiculous things. Like, Survival of the Fittest wouldn't be the most broken thing in Magic. I don't know. I think it's fine.
Yeah, it would be good.
I disagree, but I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah, all right. Mine would be Luris. Like, I would really love to see if that card is still good enough to see play and what it would do without the companion rule. Or, well, I guess it still exists, but, like, come on. 3 mana. I would love to see that card seeing play in fair decks.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty interesting because Pioneer and Modern are both have Luris in them still, and there's still tier 1 decks that use Luris even with the 3 mana cost, and I would be interested to see if that makes it a reasonable legacy card or not.
All right, our next question. How do you weigh the risk versus reward of a risky mana base? For reference, Death's Shadow tends to be frowned upon when splashing, while Blue-Red X Delver decks often do not care. Where is that line? And this comes from Jordan Woosley.
Well, I start all of my lists with 6 to 8 basic lands, so you're asking the wrong person there. I choose not to play that game.
I am on the opposite side of that fence. Have you ever looked at the epics for a mana base? It's pretty awful.
Taiga King.
Yeah, so I am probably the most conservative Death and Taxes pilot when it comes to my mana base. So I see many Death and Taxes pilots shoving in, like, 3 Caracas, 2-ish Horizon Canopy lands, and maybe, like, a Mishra's Factory on top of that. And I'm over here running as many basic planes as I possibly can. I really like the stability of being able to cast my cards consistently, and every time you play, like, a non-basic land, that's a chance that Blood Moon, Back to Basics, Wasteland, or something like that just gets you. So I tend to err on the side of being more conservative, so that I can just cast my spells and have a better chance of winning the game via play skill. Every time you just lose one to a Wasteland, it's just like, well, all right.
All right, next question is from one Jarvis U. Suppose you had to pick...
The real Taiga King.
Exactly. All hail Jarvis. Suppose you had to pick exactly one person to play 3 made-up formats on the fly. for the survival of the Earth, who would you pick and why?
This is the question I put the most thought into. I'm not going to lie. And I came up with Gabriel Nassif. There's a lot of amazing deck builders in Magic's history, but they aren't all amazing players. Like, my first thought for coming up with solving a format on the fly was Patrick Chapin, but like, he's been so good at building decks for so long, and I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. He's like a very real Magic player, don't get me wrong, but like, he's not like a Luis or a Paulo who just shows up and crushes everything. And Nassif is a top 5 all-time player, and I believe he's in the camp of like a top 10 deck builder. So I think that Nassif would be my choice.
So I will say this about Chapin. He was the first person to recognize how broken Gurmag Angler was. While on the coverage of that Pro Tour, the commentary was literally laughing at him for playing it. Like,
yeah, he is an actual factual Magic theory genius.
So for my answer for this question would probably be the Duke. I think that Reed is both a great deck builder and player, but watching Reed play, Reed's very conservative and always takes like a play that necessarily won't win him the game, but also won't lose him to play because he can usually find a way of winning later. I don't know if that's how Reed would describe his play, but that's how I've watched some of the way that Reed will play black-green decks in Modern. So if the survival of Earth was on the line, I'd probably want someone making conservative plays to make sure we all don't die.
Man, I was going to do a joke answer, but now that you've like brought up good guy Reed Duke, I just like totally agree with that. That's a good answer. But I'm still going to give my joke answer. I was going to say put it up to a Twitter poll. Earth's had a good run.
Fair enough.
All right, the next question here comes from Monolith MTG. Is the gap between Vintage and Legacy getting bigger or smaller due to powerful new cards getting printed?
Bryant, do you want to answer first? Because we have the same answer again.
Let me look at what I put. The core of Vintage is so different that the similarities don't outweigh the differences. I will say this, though. With the 2019 cards and 2020 cards being printed, there used to be a really big gap between workshop level power decks and everything else. Like, workshops used to be head and shoulders above everything else, or to joke about what I said earlier, head and shoulders above everything else. And with the power creep of everything else, blue decks have actually just become better than shops decks, which is probably great for the health of Vintage. For a long time, I was on the fence where workshop probably needed to be restricted. I don't think that's the case anymore.
I don't even know that the shops decks are like always going to be amazing. Like, it kind of seems to me like shops is the like pick your weekend for it deck, and if you pick right, it's so good right now.
Yeah, but for the last 5 years, it was the best deck, hands down, not even close.
I remember that, yeah. Phyrexian Metamorph is a hell of a drug.
5 years is also
probably short.
A pretty generous number. It's since they printed Lodestone Golem. Whenever that happened, what was that, like
World Wake?
2010? Like 2011? Like it's been close to 10 years, and the running joke was that they're just going to have to restrict every artifact because they refuse to restrict Workshop itself. And if you look at the Vintage restricted list, there are some embarrassing cards on there just because they're artifacts. And the thing that turned shops into a reasonable part of the metagame was Paradoxical Outcome. Like, specifically that deck, that card. Like, having a blue deck that could play blue control and also just combo kill you out of nowhere, and it plays maximum fast mana to get ahead of Shops' spheres. Like, that's what really put Shops back into a reasonable place.
The blue deck was also rewarded for playing Purple's recalls.
Yeah, yep. You can ritual with it if your opponent isn't on Shops, build Storm. So yeah, that was a good place to be. Yeah, I'm just gonna echo what Bryant said. Like, though Oko is a common win condition in Legacy and Vintage, the route that you get to the Oko in play is still just dramatically different. Like, Moxen and Ancestral Recall and Gush and like all of that sort of stuff around the Oko is a totally different thing than like Astrolabe and Ponder and Brainstorm. So like I don't think that the formats are getting any closer together, even if the end game looks similar some of the time. The what's actually happening in the format is totally different.
Yeah, I'm going to frame my whole comment around that Oko, actually. So if an Oko comes down in a fair matchup in Legacy, it dominates that game, and the rest of the game is just 100% focused around that card. If an Oko comes down in Vintage, you're like, oh, okay, they have a Planeswalker. And you can often just do your thing and force through, or just like Pyroblast is so common, even sometimes as a main deck card in that format, that it's not that big of a deal. So even though many of the same cards are seeing play in the two formats, the impact that they have on games and how they're used often just feel drastically different. All right, the next comment is from Lord Darkview, who asks, how do you get an unpopular idea through the filter bubble to get people to take it seriously?
Well, you put up or shut up. Build the deck, tune it, win some tournaments, get the list out there, and make people see it. I think that the entire circle jerk of like arguing with people whether something's good or bad is a waste of time in a game where you can prove it. You can just step up to the line and show if it's good or not. I think the same thing about people who are saying like who think something is bad. Like then brew something that's better, brew something that beats it. Like the whole just talking about whether something is good or bad it is just wasted time to me.
I'm similar to Brian once again. Put up results. Like people don't care how good an idea is until it shows that it can work and be tested more. Props to people like Daniel Nunes or Nunez. I think is it Nunes that plays Legacy Slivers. Like it's so easy to look at Legacy Slivers as a meme. Daniel for the last 3 years has been crushing with Slivers, and I've seen more people than Daniel just like winning with Slivers, or Eddie Zamora with Humans. Like it's so easy to look at Humans as like, oh, they ported in a budget modern deck. No, Humans is a legit thing, and Eddie put up results to get some people to believe, and now there's a huge player base. So put your money where your mouth is, like Brian said. Just go out there and do it. F the haters.
Yeah, you kind of have two choices. The one, you don't have the choice over. You can get lucky and spike an event, and then people might listen to you because your deck list is out there. The other is just grind until it works. And like a lot of the people who are kind of like the pilot for their fringe archetype are doing just that. They might be playing 2 or 3 leagues a day on average or something like that, and like really refining their deck and putting the work in. And if you really want to make a change in an archetype, that's what you need to be doing. You have to overcome like the hive mind and the echo chamber and just the general process of just like grabbing the most recent list off of Goldfish or MTG Top 8. So if you want to fight that, like get in there, get your deck lists in there, and then like maybe you're a more meaningful part of the conversation.
I actually think like the hive mind mentality of Legacy is actually like kind of bad for the format to some extent, just because of how small the format is. Where, for example, if you go back and look at the one Legacy challenge about a year ago where everyone played Belcher, because the format's so small, a certain number of players can dictate what the metagame looks like. I want to say it was like Julian, John Ryan, and a couple other people all played Bomberman for one weekend. It was just like 5 people decided to all play Bomberman at the same time, and then it spiked on Goldfish for multiple weeks just because 5 people all decided to play Bomberman one week. It's not necessarily healthy if a certain number of people can just influence the metagame.
Yeah, we could do a whole tinfoil hat episode there. There are also some weird things that occurred on Reddit with people trying to influence the format through fake accounts on there, specifically regarding like banning of cards.
Yes, I remember
but
that.
But like with a format that's so small And with so many people, or sorry, with so few people, like really, really pushing hard to do things in the format, like really weird things can happen sometimes because of an individual.
I thought you were going the pirate stompy direction with this, and then you went the band direction.
Yeah, I mean, that... Brian, do you want to briefly summarize that story for anyone who's not familiar with it? Because that's a good one.
A legacy hive mind all decided to meme on the format and spread the word that there was a new Stompy deck, Pirate Stompy, that was dominating the format, but it wouldn't ever get published because everyone agreed to 4.0 drop before the list got published. So it got to the point where people were making up lists and playing them in leagues, but they would always drop before anyone could do anything. So people were surgicaling, like main deck surgicals, just to try to look at other people's lists, and became this giant conspiracy theory before Bob Huang let the cat out of the bag in one of his articles that it was all just a meme. But by that point, TCG Player had been bought out of like every pirate from Marcadian Mass Block, Rashad and Cut Person. The 5-mana bird one were like $40. They like actually impacted the Magic card market. Like, it was a good meme. Reminded me a lot of the Thunder Bluff meme from MTG The Source. Shout outs to a Nabogrunt. But yeah.
Yeah, I went to the local store like when the rumblings of Pirate Stompy started happening, and the local store I went to, they are not known for having good prices on anything, and they always try to say like, we have tomorrow's price, which it means like, we're going to charge you what we think it might spike to in case it does spike, so we don't feel bad, which is, it's bad business. And like, I went there, but they do tend to have everything in stock, like every Magic card. So I went there and I was like, here's the list of like things. And it was all the like stupid pirates. And I was like, just in case, like if I can get this for like $50 or whatever, just in case it's real, that's not a huge deal to me. And they ran the list. They came back. They're like, that'll be $280. And I was like, you guys are idiots. No chance. This is probably a joke and I want no part of it. And like, they could have sold those Mercadian Mass bulk rares for $50, but instead they tried to gouge me for like hundreds, and I'm sure they still have them.
You love to hear it. Does it pay to be a deck specialist anymore?
Always, yeah. Like, not having to figure everything out on the fly is going to save you so much time, so much anguish, so much mental exertion over the course of a tournament. Like that Rainbow Depths League that I dropped last night, that I spend a lot of time just looking at the like, so my hand has like 2 lands, a Lotus Petal, an Elvish Spirit Guide, and a Crop Rotation, and I'm just like, can I make Merit Lage? And I'm just like staring at it like, 1, 2, 3, -1, 2, I need 2 when it's over. Oh shit, what if I get Urborg? And like, Tom Hepp isn't doing that anymore. Like he just sees them and knows that he can make it or not. And like, that is worth a lot. But that said, you do need some range. Not to pick on the D&T community, but the space between when Oko was printed and when Skyclave Apparition was printed, those folks, they didn't have a good time. And they could continue to try to force their deck, which was just objectively not very good, or they could step out and try to learn something else as a backup plan. But as the metagame does, as card printings do, D&T is back, and it pays to be a specialist again. So yes, there's a lot of value of just being very good at something, but don't be a one-trick pony.
I was tagged on Twitter in an Emma Handy tweet. The person was like, being a deck specialist isn't a bad thing. Look at Bryant Cook. They have a great career. And I don't like that. I don't think of I am a deck specialist, I guess. Like, I play the Epic Storm all the time. But I've also been playing Magic for almost 20 years. And I've played a lot of different decks in that time. Multiple formats and everything. I understand that I get pigeonholed as a deck specialist. That's fine. But I've played mono... Like, my first time ever facing Brian, I was running Zoo in the top 4 of a Modern Challenge. I've played tons of different decks, and the best thing that you can do is expand your knowledge of different archetypes and decks. So when you are playing your specialty, you know what your opponent's trying to do, and you know the ins and outs of everything. Because if you only know your deck the best, you're never going to get the maximum percentage. You want to know everything about the game. And because like even just Legacy, like if you're a death and taxes specialist, it still helps to go play Historic or Pioneer or other things, because you'll know obscure things from those formats that can then help you in Legacy later. So just go out there and play different things. That's the best advice I can give.
I wanna co-sign that, and specifically, I want to talk about why I'm getting into Arena right now. It's secretly Brian's fault, but probably for a different reason than what he thinks. So when we were doing our collab together, we were talking through lines together, and a lot of times I was spotting things and taking approaches differently than what he would have done, and like some things were very obvious to me that weren't obvious to him. And I keep thinking back to advice that I hear from people all the time, and it's just the same advice. If you want to get better at Magic, play more limited. And I thought, like, okay, what skills can I pick up from doing that I can apply to other formats? And that's why I'm grinding limited right now. I'm playing so much cube and so much draft right now to just kind of improve some of my basic fundamental skills and try to bring that back to other formats. So I think being a deck specialist is great. It's done wonderful things for many, many people, but don't let it be the only thing that you do all of the time. Don't force yourself, in like some sort of weird Stockholm syndrome situation to just keep jamming your deck when it's not the time to do it.
I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but Phil just brought it up. But I missed the top 8 of Star City Legacy Open years ago because I was bad at combat math. And after that, I said never again, and I went and played a ton of limited. I was like, I will never be bad at combat math ever again. And that's the best thing that you can do. It's just like, if you have a weakness, figure out what you can do to improve it and then go do that.
Yeah, I don't think I've told this story on the cast before. Maybe I have, but I was at an Eternal Extravaganza event between rounds. I walked up to a table and there was like a big crowd formed, and it was Nicholas DeJean versus Roland Chang, two known shops experts. And this was when like Ravager shops first broke and combat math first became super relevant in Vintage. And these are two of the best shops players in the world. And they had like 10 people watching them. And I walked up and they were just in this board stall. Like nobody was making any moves in either direction. And I immediately noticed that Nicholas had an attack that would Plague Wind Roland and push for damage at the same time, and he just wasn't making it because he wasn't he had it was like a 4/4 and a 3/3 and a 2/1 versus like 4 2/2s or something, and it was like, and Roland was at 3 life, and it's like he can't block the 2/1 to get a clean trade. You can wipe this whole board, put him to 1, and this game is over. But they just neither of them saw it for a long time, and none of the 10 people standing around them saw it either. And it was just like, you guys need to draft.
I am also getting much faster at combat math. Like, I have jammed so many drafts over the weekend, and I can already notice my ability to read the board is improving already. And I play a stupid creature deck that does combat math all the time. But I'm not used to combat math of a 2/2, a 4/3, a 1/2 flyer, and potential combat tricks that give between +1 and +3 damage. And now I'm seeing the Matrix a little better.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I think this is the Astrolabe question now. Do you think Astrolabe is unhealthy because Wasteland and Port effectively don't matter to the 3 to 5 color greed piles that run it? And this one is from the Innistrad Revenue Service.
I think that Astrolabe is fine. I kind of wish it was not printed, but I don't think it's remotely ban worthy, and I think it's fine. I still lose games to Port and Wasteland, and I'm the one playing 6 to 8 basic lands in my deck. Sometimes it happens. Also, a card like Astrolabe opens up your mana base to Thoughtseize and Spell Pierce, which is like brutal. Like if your Astrolabe ever gets countered or destroyed or turned off by a Karn or Null Rod, or you just don't draw one, that deck is bad. So it's not free. It's not Leyline of Astrolabe. Like, you really do have to draw and resolve the thing for it to go off. And I think it's a fine thing to exist in the format.
All right, I'm just gonna say it. Fuck Wasteland. Your cards don't deserve to be playable. Like, one, Wasteland is perfectly fine. The best deck in the format runs 4 of it. But I think that Legacy players in particular feel entitled for their cards to be playable. And that's just not the way things should be. Sorry, but like, Wasteland doesn't get to be the top 5 card in the format forever. Like, it's allowed to be a top 8. Like, the card's perfectly acceptable. Like, same thing goes for like Duress. Like, people are like, well, Legacy's best when Duress is good. That's not true. Duress sucks. Like, it had its time in the sun. Let it go. Same thing with like Predict and AK and Miracles. Like, there's new kids on the block. You know, like, cards had their time. I'm done. I'm ranting.
Yeah. I don't love Astrolabe's design. If it no longer existed, I'd be cool with that. But the card's not ban worthy. It does a thing. The thing has a real cost. When you tap out for an Astrolabe and your opponent casts Dark Ritual, like, awkward. So, like, I don't love some of the gameplay behind some of the Astrolabe decks, but I don't think the card is truly problematic.
Yeah, like there's a cascade of power levels where, like, at some point Astrolabe is not too good for your format anymore. Like, Astrolabe is banned in Pauper and Modern, and I think it's just right for Legacy. Like, Legacy is the baby bear's porridge here for Arkham's Astrolabe, and that is what it is.
I think we're going on like 4 episodes in a row of you using that that phrase. I love it.
I also love it. Would you say that phrase is like baby bear's porridge?
I would.
Oh, too deep. I'm pulling out. The next
like
question.
Father Bear's porridge. All right, I'll read the question. Phil is gone. So this question is from Rain Vorland. How or what do you study to improve your knowledge? How has judge certification helped you as a player? What are the heuristics that seem to work best for you? To what methods do you attribute your skills? And who are your favorite theory writers? All right, so this is a thick question. There's a lot going on here, so
let's tackle the judge end first, because Brian and I can both speak to that.
All right. So obviously, like, being forced to really understand the rules of the game, it matters a lot when you're playing the game. Like, it does help to know it. There's a lot of great players out there who never were judges, but really fundamentally understand the game. But being a judge where you have to maintain your certification and pass tests, and like, you're constantly talking with other judges about policy changes and rules changes and stuff, really keeps you sharp. And that I've certainly found enough advantages over the years because I understood something that someone else didn't, or I just like made the stack dance in a way that I wanted to. It's also nice not to have to call a judge every time something is close. You just know how things work. And like, I think I've told the story before, but like, I've gotten so much information from opponents who call a judge. Like, I had an opponent Vendilion click me once, and my hand had Natural Order in it, and they immediately called a judge. And I knew that they were holding Perish. Like, the question they were asking that judge was, does Perish kill Progenitus? And I just like got that read for free because they weren't sure how the rules of the game work. And you get to skip that sort of thing when you just already know. Also, like, the perspective of how tournaments work, like what's going on behind the scenes, how to interact with a judge is very important. Like, a lot of people end up falsely incriminating themselves by just like talking too much or saying the wrong thing, or getting caught in a lie because they thought it would help their case or something. And just knowing how to interact with tournament officials is very important.
So when I first became a judge, I did it over the summer, and I sat down and I just treated it like it was a class. Like there's a whole bunch of resources online. There's practice tests you could take. I sat down, I studied layers, I studied rules and things like that, and it did so much good for me understanding a lot of the fringe weird stuff that can happen in Legacy. And I can't reiterate enough how good that was for me. Is it something that every single player should do? You don't need to go so far as to become a judge, but if you understand some of the things that are going on behind the scenes a little bit better, especially when it comes to like parts of the turn, priority passes, layers, stuff like that, it will help you. You don't know when it will help you until you've studied that stuff, and then all of a sudden you'll realize that you can do something at a weird time, or that there's this weird interaction with like Painter Servant and some clone effect or something like that like bails you out of a weird situation.
So I might not be a judge, but I'm going to share what Brian talked about knowing the rules. So through playing Magic, you'll notice, like, let's say, for example, the end step and end of turn are two different things. Well, the cleanup step, most importantly. So the cleanup step and end of turn. Because in paper, if you say move to cleanup, your opponent no longer gets to respond if they agree. So you'll discard a card, they'll go to cast like an end step, let's say Fact or Fiction. You get to say, no, I've already discarded. Like that's just how the rules work. To bring up a real example of this is I was playing in Grand Prix Las Vegas for Legacy, and my opponent was on Black Red Reanimator. I put this in a tournament report too at the time. They went turn 1, Gristlebrand, draw 14 cards, put Sire of Insanity into play, and said, go to cleanup. I agreed. They discarded down to 7. And then I went to go, I like slowly moved my hand towards my deck because I was like, I think that they missed their trigger. And I go to draw, they're like, you have to discard your hand. And I'm like, well, that's not how any of this goes. I'm going to call a judge. Judge comes over. We each give our story. My opponent clearly lied about it because they said that they discarded their entire hand at once. And I said, that's not what happened. They call another judge over. That judge asked the person. They then said that they discarded down to 7 and then discarded the remaining hand. And then the head judge got involved. And my story remained consistent the entire time. My opponent's story changed 3 times between all the judges. So like Brian said, knowing the rules and, you know, just like telling the truth, and like liars often like try to work an advantage through information, which will get caught by judges. Judges aren't dumb people. You know, they can often find that stuff out.
All right. Should we move to a different part of the question then? So how about go ahead?
What do you do to improve your knowledge? I get my hands dirty. I play matches and I tear them apart. I let other people tear them apart. A lot of the time I've seen someone like at a tournament, like they've just lost a really close game and their friend who was birding the match says like, 3 turns ago, why didn't you like make this attack? It would have been free. Like they were tapped out. And then the person just sort of goes like, oh, well, it wouldn't have mattered. And like, they just blow it off. Like you got to listen to all of those sort of feedback. Sometimes I know you're on tilt, you just lost a close match, or even more importantly, if you win a match, like if you win and your friend behind you says like, you could have won 3 turns ago. Like you had like the deterministic loop and you just didn't go for it. It's like, oh, the correct answer to that is, oh, really? What did I miss? Like, where was it? It's not didn't matter scoreboard. Like that's just not a good way to think about Magic. And if you were right in your play, like if your friend is like, you missed the deterministic loop 3 turns ago, and you're like, I was playing around surgical extraction and extirpate, and like I felt like I was going to win as long as I didn't walk into just even something I don't think they're going to have. Like I could afford to play around it, so I did. Like being able to explain your play or be open to hearing the better one, they're both valuable exchanges with other people, and you really gotta get in there and get dirty. Like if you watch any of my YouTube videos, I'm constantly just like, oh yeah, it would have been better if I did this. Like I probably say that more than anything else. Like I'll make a play and immediately explain why I could have done it slightly better.
Yeah, watch any content from a super high level player and they will constantly be talking about things that they could have done better. Like, I've watched some of both of your videos, and I know I do it in mine as well. All of the time, there's always these little tiny things you could have done better, and a lot of times they don't come to you until 10 or 15 seconds after you make the play. But the more reps you have, the more you jam, the more you get people to work with you and help critique your matches and your play, the more of those things you're going to catch on your own.
So I do a lot of Google Hangouts, or at this point they're Discord Hangouts, but and I surround myself by people that are better than me. And I don't want people that play combo. Or, well, they can play combo, but like I don't need other Storm players telling me like Storm ideas. Like I honestly get more information and more like deck building theory and magic theory from people that don't play Storm combo. Like I'm more interested in those thoughts and ideas because it allows me to, you know, like 5D chess my own brain a little bit and think in a way that I normally wouldn't think, because I think a lot of Storm players tend to have similar mindsets, and I want something that's just completely different so that way I can grow faster. Like, yeah, you can grow from listening to other players that play the same deck, and you'll get there over time. Like, you might grow a little bit at a time, but I'm more looking to make leaps. I know, like, I can pick up the things that other Storm players would tell me on my own typically, but for example, Brian might know something about an archetype that I didn't think of, and now all of a sudden I know to play to that. And I'm more interested in that sort of information. It's it's really difficult to describe, but hopefully I conveyed it well. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a local guy. His name's Adam, and I've teamed with him a few times at Trios events, and this dude knows every deck list that's ever been published. Like, it's kind of insane. Like, the amount of time he must dedicate to studying deck lists would melt my brain. But, like, we were playing in a modern trios event at a Star City, and I was like, there was like a random turn where I felt like I was way ahead, and I was like, Adam, what could go wrong here? And he was like, there was a Japanese list that ran one post-mortem lunge. And I'm like, oh, good to know. And just like, I would never put in the work to know that. Maybe it doesn't even matter, but like, if I didn't ask, I would have never known that ever. And like, I just might have gotten blown out by postmortem lunch. So just use the people around you. They have a different skill set than you do, and smash them all together and everyone gets smarter.
The next question, well, hold on. There was more to this question. It was like Questionzilla.
Yeah, this is a Voltron of questions. I think I know where we are. One of them was about heuristics that work best.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's some core ones of like, know who's the beatdown, always be clocking, the philosophy of fire, bolt the bird. Like, there's some like things that stand the test of time that you should have in your bag. But in general, I don't have a whole lot of nothing I could really explain in this podcast format. Like, I will try to see as many cards as I can in a turn. I will try to see everything I'm going to see in a turn before I commit to anything else. Like casting Oko and then casting Ponder is not something I'm likely to do. I'm going to Ponder first. Just like, there's things like that I stick to pretty religiously. But Magic is so complicated. There's not just like an easy heuristic that's going to make anyone better at the game in this format. Just me talking about it on a podcast.
So I will say this. Oh, sorry, Phil. I did a tutoring session with someone that was a Delver player. And in their head, they were taught, you preordain, you ponder, and then you brainstorm. That's how you do it. You always preordain, ponder, and then brainstorm. And we got to a point in the game where I said, I think we should brainstorm here because your hand is clunking and it needs fixing. But the response was, well, I have a preordain and a ponder. I don't see why brainstorm here is correct. And I said, because your opponent's likely to play a haymaker next turn and you need both a land drop and an answer. because like you're getting behind on board. And they go, no, I'll preordain. And they preordain, and literally both the cards they needed were on top. And I know that's results-based thinking, but they ended up losing that game because they were playing a turn behind the rest of the game. And sometimes you need to get ahead, even though it's against the natural heuristic of what people tell you is typically the right play.
Yeah, I did an entire episode of Wizard School on my YouTube channel about Ponder, Preordain, and Brainstorm, and when you want to use each of them. And committing to a hierarchy is a mistake. So, yeah, definitely agree with that.
Yeah. If I were to add one of my own, it's when your opponent makes a bad play, think about why they're doing it. Because a lot of times a play may look terrible and may objectively be wrong, but if you stop thinking there, you're actually missing out on information. Your opponent might be making that suboptimal play because it's the only way they could possibly win. Or they might be making that suboptimal play because they're not experienced in the matchup, and like you can take that assumption moving forward. Like, don't just stop thinking about a bad play when it's made. Try to figure out what the opponent is thinking in making that play. And sometimes you might realize, oh geez, the opponent is on a totally different level than me. I didn't realize that this thing could happen.
Yeah, Michael Jacob, I used to watch his stream once in a while, and he always used to say, give your opponent the benefit of the doubt. There is a like thinking, breathing human being on the other side of those bad plays, and like just try to figure out, like, if you know they're holding a 4-drop and they cast a 3-drop instead, what are they doing with that other mana? Like, I'm sure they didn't just decide to play off curve as a brain fart. Like, is it Spell Pierce? Is it Swords of Plowshares? Like, you gotta be thinking about that sort of stuff. All right, and the last part of this monster question is, who are your favorite theory writers? I mentioned Chapin already. He is among the best. Sam Black has some pretty heavy stuff that he's put out, and Paulo Vitor Damarosa is one of the best content creators in our game, too. A lot of the time, the best articles get the least clicks. Like, a lot of great writers have said the works they're most proud of were poorly received. And that's because a lot of people open up an article, they scroll for a deck list, and then they close it if there isn't one. Like, that's sort of what Magic content has become, like deck lists and sideboard guides. And that's not going to make you a better player. Like, read that heady, long, like thick theory piece. That's going to help you more than this week's deck list will.
To comment on what Brian was saying, I actually hate how a bunch of like article series have just become decklist dumps. I really don't like it. I wish that there was more theory articles, or like just, I don't know, more like information based and less just like decklists and explaining card choices.
Yeah, Mike Flores based his entire career off that. Like the Swimming with Sharks column he had on the Mothership for a long time. He literally just took, it was like every Thursday or Friday, he took every deck that top 8'd a PTQ the previous week and just dumped it. And somehow that was a column that people liked. Like, ugh.
Theory articles are hard to write. Like, so many of the articles that I've written have been like on like D&D theory and things like that. And I can tell you that a lot of times those articles that you can read in, 5 minutes take 8 to 10 hours to write, edit, do all the hyperlinks for, and things of that nature. Like, a lot of work goes into that stuff. And there are much easier ways of producing content that are far faster and better received.
For sure.
Womp womp.
All right, Phil, what do you think about Yori and D&G? Alexander Vincent wants to know.
All right. At a glance, it seems like it makes good matchups better and bad matchups slightly worse. I did not like Yori and D&T pre-Skyclave. I didn't really think that was playable. There are Yorian bugs, specifically with Containment Priest. If you blink Containment Priest and your other creatures, you get some of them back and not all of them, and no one knows why. Magic Online is aware, They are trying to fix it. They have not succeeded yet, but it is on the plate of things that is going to get fixed, so be wary of that. But as far as the current list, I haven't played it, so I can't give you good, informed feedback on that list. Like, this is what I can give you, but I don't want to run my mouth off and say a bunch of things when I don't have first-hand experience with it.
Hey, that's a throwback to our put up or shut up answer from a couple minutes ago. Like, Phil doesn't know if it's good or bad because he hasn't put the reps in, and thus he is not offering an opinion. So, great job, Phil.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who will yell things very, very loudly that they have never played, and they will say all sorts of things about it. Not trying to specifically call out one person here, but it's been very relevant in the D&T community recently. But all of the time, people will shout things about, like, spoiler cards in particular that no one has ever played a game with. Like, give it time, put in the reps. That's one thing that I'm very good about doing, is most of the time, if I think something's good, I test it. If I think something's bad, I'll test it so other people can see what it's like and learn from me.
Yeah, like, speaking of spoilers, like a couple weeks ago when Commander Legend spoilers were coming out, that 3/2 that mindslavers your opponent when they're searching the deck. Do either of you remember the name off the top?
I don't. I know what card you're talking about, though.
Yeah. Twitter exploded over that card. Like, this is the end of Legacy. Why would Wizards design this? I'm quitting Magic. Blah, 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 blah. And then a day and a half later, Hull Breacher was previewed, and nobody said anything. And Hull Breacher is a significantly more scary card than that other one. And that's just, like, what you're dealing with when you get into that, like, shouting without playing a single game. Sort of, like, you're going to miss big things, and you're going to get stuck on small things.
I have a question for the two of you. Do you think that Echo of Aeon should be banned?
What?
No.
You would not if you go back and look at the Reddit thread of the spoiler for Echo of Aeons, people are like, I give it 2 weeks. There's no chance this card doesn't get banned. Stuff like that. Like, it wasn't even like one person. It was half the Legacy community on Reddit was like, it's literally just Time Twister. This card's going to be banned. There's 2 decks that play Echo of Aeons right now.
Yeah, and it is for sure actually literally not Time Twister.
Correct. I've taken 6 off it. I know.
Yeah. All right. What's one card you wish was Legacy playable? One that looks good but fell a little short of actually being playable.
Fuck you, Brian.
I'm going to say Dark Ritual. Yep. Dark Ritual and its associated decks have always been just a little not quite what I want them to be. Though I will acknowledge that the Epic Storm lately has been pretty impressive. Shout
outs to Alex McKinley, top 8'd the Legacy Showcase and the Legacy Challenge this week. Proud of you, Alex.
That's a hell of a run.
Yeah, kid's good. And writes great articles, by the way. He's the only one on theepicstorm.com that does a free-form article every month on a different topic. He's a very good writer. I am not, so I don't do that shit. My answer would be Crowstorm. I've wanted this to be a real card for years, ever since they put it into, is it Unhinged? The one with the wrench?
Unstable.
Is that the one with the wrench?
I think so.
Whatever Crowstorm is in. I saw that, and like, honestly, that's a Legacy playable power level card that wouldn't be too good. Basically, you just have a Storm Engine that you could cast through Gaddock Teeg, and it blocks Delver of Secrets. It's worse than Empty the Warrens most of the time. I think would be completely fine.
Oh yeah, totally.
Maybe they'll put in a secret lair with a black border.
I would love it.
So mine is Sword of Truth and Justice. That card got to see play for like almost 0 time. And it was super cool and super good. It was like the sort of card that I was hoping for years. And then the meta shifted and things like Oko arrived. And now like the protection colors aren't quite right. The ability's still super
Is that the
cool.
blue-white one?
Yeah. And like I would love to be playing that card, but it's just not there right now. I would love to get to a point again where there's like a dominant blue-white control deck and like sleeve that sucker up, but I'm not hopeful right now.
So I know that this isn't incredibly relevant to Legacy, but I price out my decks once a year just so I keep an inventory of my collection and what everything's worth. I was pricing out these swords because I have a commander deck that I never play. And it's a Japanese foil Sword of Fire Ice. It's like $350. Sword of Feast and Famine, same thing, $200. Body and Mind, Japanese foil is like $20. The playability between Body and Mind and sort of Feast and Famine is not that much. Like, they're pretty similar, and there's definitely some metagames where, in Legacy at least, where sort of Body and Mind is definitely better than Feast and Famine. And it's just like shocking to me that the price scale is that wide.
I think I ran sort of Body and Mind at GP Louisville a couple years back when like the Reed Duke, like Leovold deck thing was popular. Like that card's Legacy playable. Fringe.
Yeah, there
but
was a
it's there.
time. Yeah. Yeah, like every removal spell was Abrupt Decay. Like it was a good time for sort of Body and Mind.
Swung through True Name Nemesis.
Yep, that's what it was there for. All right.
Sorry to go off topic.
Oh, I mean, that's what this whole podcast is, really. Like, I don't know how we keep the viewers, but somehow they manage to stay through all of the pizza and Netflix.
Who doesn't love pizza?
All right. Next up, what are your sleeper picks for the meta from the Innistrad Revenue Service?
Elves is really good right now. Like, crazy good. I don't even know if it's a secret or a sleeper, or if people just think that it's a fringe deck, but I do think Elves is genuinely excellent right now.
I think the Allosaurus Shepherd decks should be explored more than they are. That card is dumb.
For sure.
I'm going to copy Brian. I think Elves is just terrific right now.
Yeah, I mean, I also think Elves is terrific right now. I don't know if I'd call this a sleeper, but a deck I would like to have more data on is Death Shadow. The card picked up a new Death Shadow effect recently, and I would be interested in seeing if that deck has more legs than it did previously. I've seen it do some cool things in leagues, but I don't have enough data. I don't know that I want to call it a sleeper pick, but that's something I secretly have my eye on.
I've gotten Parody and Shadow in the last week, and they weren't running the new Shadow, which I thought was pretty interesting. They were still running Gurmags. I don't know. I couldn't tell you if one's better than the other, but I know that maybe all the Death Shadow opponents aren't doing their due diligence and testing out new things.
Well, the new Shadow is it gets minus X based on the highest life total, not your own.
Oh,
so you have to be ahead for it to even come into play. I have a Modern League I recorded where my opponent played that card as a 2/2, and I just cast Uro, and it died. So like it is not free. It is not just another Shadow. It's a very different card. Though on the flip side, if you team or battle rage that thing, it's twice as big for the second hit as the first one, which I also found out the hard way.
that is really awesome.
So did I.
I love that.
Yeah.
I've played Team or Battle Rage in my life.
All right. Our next question.
Let's keep this thing rolling.
Yeah. Our next question is from Michael Mapson at Expedition Map, who asks for the number one tip for people trying to improve the consistency and quality of their content and or increase their audience. Let's start there, and then there's some other things in this question.
Find your niche and hit it hard. Your audience will eventually find you. Nobody can do everything, and transitions are slow. Like when I was like streaming, I built up a legacy following, and then if like I only had like a little bit of time left, not enough time for a legacy league, I would like jump into a draft or something, and everyone would leave like immediately. You would see it happen in real time on stream. It's hard to transition into another format because that's another audience. Then listen to your audience. Even shitty comments might have good advice in them. If someone like tells you you're a terrible player and why are you even here, and your fans making a bunch of noise in the background and your quality's bad, like, okay, I do need to fix those fan issues. Like, yeah, you're right, even if you're a jerk. So listen People always say don't read the comments, but I read every comment.
So do I.
Yeah. Also, whore aggressively on social media. Just like when I post a video, I tweet it. I post it in every Facebook group I'm in. I don't have Reddit, but I probably should if I was really taking my own advice. Just make sure people know who you are and where they can find you. Make industry contacts. I did a collab with Phil. I was on stream with Skybills a little while ago. I've been on other people's podcasts. Like, all of those are worth doing, and they help you get that audience crossover. And don't be afraid to send that email or DM asking for a shot on a new platform. Like, I've sold a number of articles where I just like DM'd Cedric. It's just like, hey, I wrote 8,000 words about miracles. Does Star City want it? And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. But just shop it around and make sure to like. There's nothing special about a content creator other than that they have taken the time to get their stuff out there. Like, they're probably, unless it's like LSV, they're probably not any better than you. A lot of content creators really are just normal people like you or me sitting in their house playing a lot of Magic Online. So chase it down, make the effort. That's my advice on that.
So a lot of content creators start off thinking, well, like, I don't have a really nice mic, or my web camera is not that good. I don't have a green screen. I don't have this. I don't have that. The technical stuff you can do over time. Like, I have a pretty nice setup now, but I started small, and so do a lot of other players. You don't have to have everything up front other than the drive to want to make the content. Like, that's truly the one thing you actually need, because like one piece of content every month is nice, but you're going to lose return visitors on that. Like, you have to do it somewhat frequently in order to keep people engaged. And this isn't necessarily tied to the question, but marketing is super important. You really do want to share your articles all over the internet, like Brian said, but marketing with other players and networking, I guess, is more of what I'm trying to say here. But networking, like meeting new people and getting ideas of how they do things and why they do it this way or that way. Like, when I started this podcast with Anurag gave me a bunch of really good advice for improving the quality of what I was doing. And it probably would have taken me a much longer time had I not discussed things with Anurag. And in return, I gave Anurag some design advice for Anurag's stream. So it was a nice back and forth. And you can do that through networking. And networking is also a really good way of just becoming a better Magic player. You want to play with better players. That way you can get more information. So, you know, when you're at an event, say hi to someone that you think might be better than you, or, you know, it's pretty simple. Like, a lot of Magic players aren't assholes. Like, if you come up and say hi, they'll be like, hey, I'm Bryant. Nice to meet you. How's your day going? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Hitting from a slightly different axis. When you're first getting into content creation, keep your mental health in mind from the beginning. Content creation is something that you can bury yourself in and lose yourself in. It's really easy to look at the numbers on your videos and be discouraged. It's crushing if you start up a stream and you have 0 or 1 viewers or something like that. You have to be making the content because you want to make it. Figure out what your goals are, figure out how frequently you want to stream, set that schedule, and do it. If there's no one in your stream, don't sit there silent. Talk, like, practice your skills, do what you're going to do it like you were teaching to a whole classroom. And in terms of success, I find thinking about your numbers much better if you think about them in real life examples. If you have 20 people watching you, you have a classroom. If you have 100 people watching you, that's a lecture hall. Like, the numbers might not seem all that impressive, but, if your YouTube videos get 500 views, like, that's 500 people who wanted to come and watch your content, and that's really cool at the end of the day. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't get caught up in the numbers. Make what you want to make. Listen to your fans, and try to stay healthy about it, because it can be hard when you're first starting.
Yeah, that's why I quit streaming. Like, I realized that my stream schedule, I started 3 nights a week. I knocked it down to 2 nights a week. And then even then I was like calling in like sick or tired, like 1 out of every 4 streams when I was just doing it 2 nights a week. And I realized that's just not for me. So my current YouTube channel, I don't have a schedule. Sometimes I put out a video a day. Sometimes I go a week without anything. And that's my mental health. Like, you can gauge my mental health based on how much I'm producing on YouTube. And that's what I've found that is healthy for me. And that's more important at the end of the day.
Yeah. If you look at my like number of tournaments I entered and amount of content I was producing, they line up in very interesting ways, because it used to be like tournaments all the time, and then I started making more content and streaming, and now it's like, geez, can I really put in another 8 hours for this event when I'm trying to stream Saturday and Sunday? Like, it's hard. All right,
I'm well known for hating the weekend challenges on Magic Online, because I try to play a league a day anyway, but all right, let's keep this moving.
Yeah, it's too real. All right, favorite deck you've ever played? That's another part of this question.
Mine is the Urza control deck that I played. I won GP Columbus with it. Obviously, winning makes the memory all that much sweeter, but I played that deck at the Star City Invitational the week before the GP. I missed top 16 on breakers, good for a cool $1,000. Then I won the GP. So I made about 10 grand in a week playing that deck, and then they banned 3 cards out of it after I won the GP. So that deck was like smooth, sexy butter, and I would just lather myself up in it and roll around if I could.
Mine is very easily blue, white, red Splinter Twin. Like, having a Deceiver Exarch on board and a Wall of Omens on board, looking your opponent with open mana in the eyes, and then putting Splinter Twin on the Wall of Omens. It's everything I've ever wanted.
Mine's pretty obviously
so interactive.
The Epic Storm. I mean, I've played the deck forever, but I've played a lot of Magic over the years. Like, I have a lot of like favorite decks from certain periods of my life. Like, when I was young and starting out and playing a lot of Standard, I used to love the Standard KCI deck. Like, that deck was amazing. And playing it was a ton of fun. I thought about that deck when I went to bed at night, like how I could get better at playing KCI in Standard. I love the blue-white Delver deck in Standard. I played so much of that deck that I was playing like 4 Standard events, like locals during the week. So I think it's okay to love different decks at different points in your life.
All right. Should we cull some of the questions at this point to kind of keep things moving?
Yeah, I'm going to skip a couple sections of this one, but we do need to know who our favorite Ninja Turtles are. Mine, I think, is an easy Donatello, with Mikey and Leo tied for a distant second, and then Raphael far in the back.
I'm really not liking that I'm behind Brian for all these fucking questions. Donatello's also my favorite, and Raphael's the least favorite. I don't like this.
Well, if you actually filled in your show notes, I would know that.
Yeah, I don't have strong opinions on the Ninja Turtles. Like, I remember the song. I had Ninja Turtle action figures, but I haven't watched a Ninja Turtle thing in like 18 plus years, so IDK.
All right, let's keep rolling. All right, this is a very good question. The person who asked it requested to remain anonymous, which I think is really funny. In Season 6, Episode 6 of Futurama, Accountant Hermes Conrad swallows a calculator to gain its powers. What would you eat to get better at your job? I would dig up the dusty old bones of B.F. Skinner and just become a genius of behavior analysis.
I'm just not going to answer this, Phil.
I would have to eat like some archaic tome for Latin-based reasons, I'm sure, but I would be worried about summoning demons afterwards. I've seen enough TV shows to know where that sort of thing goes.
Yeah, that's guaranteed.
All right.
All right. Travis Hilly asks, how good is Blood Moon in Vintage right now? I'm going to say not very. It costs 3 and everyone has Moxen. So, like, 3 mana in Vintage is tinker. Like, casting Blood Moon. There will be games where Blood Moon wins. A couple years ago at Eternal Weekend, a budget mono-red Moonstompy deck emerged that was pretty viable. I played against one undefeated in round 5. So like it clearly had legs, but like what are you shutting down? Like Bazaar is probably the best thing to turn into a mountain, and those decks produce 12 power on turn 1. So good luck with your 3-drop.
Yeah, I did watch a video of vintage stalwart Justin Ganari getting absolutely hosed by a Blood Moon while he was playing Hogak. So you can maybe steal some games here and there, but I don't think you should expect Blood Moon to be the powerhouse. I was about to say that it is in Legacy, but even in Legacy it's a little sketch right now.
Yeah. All right, next question. It's another one from Rain Vorland. What is your favorite basic land? So, of the 3 basic lands, I think Cold Snap has the best art, but I like the Ice Age aesthetic the best.
I have one of each invasion basic I used because it was the first set that I played.
I really like the Odyssey Lightning Plains. That's what I use in my Death and Taxes deck. As far as newer lands go, I really like the Phyrexian Swamp from Jumpstart. Like, having your swamps having Phyrexian language on them is super cool. I'm into that. I haven't
Holy
seen the
shit.
card in person, though.
We still have so many questions.
Yeah, we're trying to move it along fast here. Yep.
All right. What effect will a return to paper have on the Legacy metagame? I'm going to sum up our answers here. Essentially, we think it's none or very little.
Yeah, Magic Online has always set the pace for the Legacy technology. When Star City was having a weekly open, maybe that was a different time, but people are going to play what they own in paper. The format's a lot harder to switch decks, and like there's just fewer tournaments, so basically none.
All right, next question. How good is everyone at pickup basketball? I'm good
Not.
at defending. I can't shoot.
So this is actually in my Star City player card, like when they're running coverage and like my stats come up, like one of my fun things is always down for pickup basketball, which I assume is where this question came from. And I'm pretty mediocre, but I am enthusiastic enough. I definitely have gone to war. I've made enemies on the playground as an adult with other grown men over going hard to the hoop.
All right, from Kai, what is the most elegant way to tap/manipulate paper cards? How do you arrange your cards on the battlefield and shuffle your library?
So I noticed that somewhere along the way, I tap my lands 45 degrees to the left, but I tap my creatures 90 degrees to the right, which I don't know why I did that or where it came from, but I do it, and it's completely subconscious. And I shuffle exactly enough. So it's random and not 1 second more. Like, I want my deck to be random, but I don't want to waste time in the match. And I always give my opponent's deck a couple overhand shuffles. A cut is not enough. And I'm wondering if COVID is going to change my behavior moving forward.
I am very conscious about my opponents seeing my deck when I shuffle. So I shuffle with my head like almost like over the table with the deck off to the side and back sideways. So there's zero chance that they could ever see anything. But have you ever noticed how whenever you face a new player at like an FNM or something, you can always tell that they're new just based on their mannerisms? Like when you've been playing Magic a long time, you see how people with confidence tap their cards, but like people that are new tend to like fidget a little bit more. Just an observation.
Yeah, like I don't want to be ableist because I imagine there are people whose hands don't work quite the way that ours do, but yes, you can generally tell by how someone handles cards. Like, can they fan out a 7-card hand in one hand and then like take actions with their other hand, or are they like holding it in 2 hands like they're playing solitaire with their grandma? Like there's there are tells that you can usually see if someone is new to physically handling paper cards or not.
Yeah, play with confidence. I have so many anecdotes about how I am 100% dead on board, and then I just, like, pass. My opponent says, go to combat, and I, like, think, wait, it's like, read one of the cards. Yes, okay, that's fine. And then they go, like, wait, what's going on? Why did you check that? Like, if you play with confidence, like, you can turn a lot of, like, no situations where you don't have anything into a more confident situation. There's an awesome story about, I think it was Julian playing against a Death and Taxes player. Julian has Natural Order in hand and the mana to cast it, but this Death and Taxes player has passed for like 3 turns in a row with 2 white mana up and always 1 card in hand. It was a Plains. It was not a Containment Priest.
Yep, that's beautiful stuff. I feel like I could talk for 15 minutes on just Jedi mind tricks and sort of things you can do with the physical positioning of your cards, but we don't have 15 minutes now. All right. Question from Charles Bobinger. Are there any matchups in Vintage or Legacy that are much better or worse than people seem to think they are? So that depends on the people. I think the format hive minds are pretty good at knowing what's favored where. But if you're trying to come into Legacy or Vintage from Modern or Pioneer, you might miss how great Death and Taxes is against Sneak and Show, or how great the Epic Storm is against Force of Will decks. Like, that sort of thing might not be apparent to you right away.
I want to share something that I found on Jarvis's Twitter today. He was talking about hard MTG lessons that he learned, and he learned this one from Jason Ford. Don't focus on good or bad matchups, focus on how you're able to win or lose. I think that's a rather good philosophy, and it has hidden implications. There's a nice nugget of wisdom for future thought.
Yeah, that's something that I tell people when they come to me. They're like, what do you think of this card in this deck? And a lot of the time I'll ask them, what does the game state look like when you're winning? Like, what does the last turn of the game look like before your opponent concedes in your mind? And if this card doesn't help you get there, then it's probably not what you want.
All right. Our next question is from Jordan, who asks, what's your holy grail in Magic? Physical collection, trophies, titles, something else?
I guess this is kind of a humble brag, but like, I have a pretty dope collection. I have trophies and I have titles, and I still want more of all those things, but becoming a household name in content creation is currently my white whale. Like, that's my next big one.
Yeah, mine is similar. I would like to become a premier content creator without like selling out or abandoning my principles. Like, I know there are certain things that I could do to increase my viewership greatly, but I'd like to still make the content that I want to be making without just selling out.
Like the other two, I have a pretty nice paper collection. I show it off once a year with my deck showcases. I'm pretty happy with the Epic Storm and how much it's grown. Like, the website is truly phenomenal. The writers are a great team and they do a lot. And I have trophies, but honestly, my goals right now are just more success playing before that changes. Brian mentioned it last episode, but kids are on the horizon for me. I mean, we're not currently expecting, I hope. I don't know. But like, they need to happen within the next few years, and my life is going to change after that. So like, I want to accomplish some of my long-term Magic goals in the next few years before that reality starts to ship.
All right, Brian. And on that note, Tarmogoyf or Fleetwheel Cruiser in Vintage?
If I had to pick one, Cruiser,
That's
but
correct.
honestly,
Yep,
like, I don't want to play either. Fleetwheel Cruiser.
That's the point of the question.
All right, you heard it here. Bryant wants to play Fleetwheel Cruiser in Vintage.
Perfect.
All right, next up from Harper. As someone just getting into Legacy on MTGO, should I specialize on one type of deck first or rent everything and get a feel for the format?
Rent.
This kind of hits on things that we said earlier in the episode, where being a specialist is great, but the wider range of knowledge and experience you have, the better.
Yeah, you'll find a lane. If you just the rental services are great for this, removing the financial barriers to just playing every deck. Just try everything, get a feel for everything, and eventually you'll find something you like, and you'll sort of settle into a preferred lane. And you should find it that way.
All right, and I suppose for our final question that we're going to get into here, from R. Schiller 20, would you rather fight 50 1-foot goblins or 1 50-foot goblin?
Well, we're in luck because Muxus makes it so we no longer have to choose. He is a 50-foot goblin who brings 50 1-foot goblins with him.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I don't think we can end on a much higher note than that. All right, gentlemen, you have anything you want to say to cap off the episode?
Thank you for your submissions.
I just want to, thanks everyone for your questions. Sorry if we missed them. And co-host, I think we did a good job just closing off in the 2-hour cap. I thought this was going to be like 2.5, 3 hours when I looked like halfway through our question list. I was like, oh God, we're going to be here all night.
No, we
trimmed
things
some
to do.
Like, there's a lot that we allowed.
Yeah, we cut a couple on the fly, but yeah, I think we hit all the important ones.
Other than
Right,
why do I look like the singer of the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones?
I think it was just that one image. Like, I've seen that guy before, and it's never occurred to me that he looks like you.
Yeah, I don't think I look like them, but sure.
All right, folks. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Eternal Glory podcast. We'll be back next week with a maybe more coherent episode, but hopefully you enjoyed this